ध्यायेत् शारदचन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्याङ्गकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणीश्वरं गुरुवरं योगासनाध्यासितं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रं यहमहमिति साक्षादात्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वतामच्युतव पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। Namo Ramana. We will commence the Friday evening Atma Vicharam from Ramanacentre for Learning, Bengaluru. We usually on this Friday Satsangh read one of the Upadesham from Bhagavan from this book, Ramana Answers Self-Enquiry 1900 to 1950. This is a wonderful compilation of all the answers given by Bhagavan on the subject matter of Atma Vichara between 1900 to 1950. And this wonderful compilation of the question and answers has been done by our founder, President Sri A.R. Ramanacentre. After reading this week's Upadesham and meditating upon it by Bhagavan's grace, we will have a 20 minutes Atma Vichara practice. Following that, our President Sarada would be talking about Atma Vichara or self-enquiry as it has been contemplated in Ramana Gita. Ramana Gita is a Sanskrit compilation of again the question and answers of many devotees to Bhagavan, and the compilation has been done by Ganpati Muni. And in the series of question and answers that we have been looking in the Self-Enquiries book, we have reached the questions put to Bhagavan between 1936 to 1950. We will again touch upon last week's question and meditate on it. The question which was put by devotee was, I have read Who Am I? While inquiring who the I is, I cannot hold it for any length of time. Secondly, I have no interest in the environment, but yet I have hopes that I shall find some interest in life. Bhagavan's answer, a dreamer dreams a dream. He sees the dream world with pleasures and pains, but he wakes up and then loses all the interest in the dream world. So it is with the waking world also. Just as the dream world, being only a part of yourself and not different from you, ceases to interest you if you awake from this waking dream and realize that it is a part of yourself and not an objective reality, because you think that you are apart from the objects around you, you desire a thing. But if you could understand that the thing was only a thought form, you would no longer desire it. All things are like bubbles on water. You are the water, and the objects are the bubbles. They cannot exist apart from the water, but they are not quite the same as the water. They are not quite the same as the water, Bhagavan says. That is the reason why we lose interest if we get to know what it is. And Bhagavan, one of the part of the answer which has been highlighted by Sri A.R. Natarajanji in italics, I will read that part again. Just as the dream world, being only a part of yourself and not different from you, ceases to interest you, if you awake from this waking dream and realize that it is a part of yourself and not an objective reality. This is the most important part, because the devotee's question here is that I cannot hold on to the self at a length of time. Though I understand who am I, though I understand inquiring who the I is, though I am not interested in the environment around me, yet why I am not able to hold on to this who am I is the question. So Bhagavan is saying that there is not a clear understanding, there is still a lack of understanding. Like in the dream, he gives the dream example. In the dream example, we may be interested in the dream as it is going on. We may be very much involved in the dream as though it is real. But the moment we wake up, we completely know that it was all just a transitory thing which was not at all real. And therefore we let go of it without giving any significant importance to it. Isn't it? And we recognize everything there was all imaginary. It was all just something that came created by our own thought forms. And therefore it has no real substance. And that recognition makes us forget the dream and not even worry about even if the dream is happening or even if next day there is a dream. The same thing would happen. The dream may be real at that point, but as soon as we wake up, we know that that day it is no different from the previous day's dream. And we may have such innumerable repetitions of the dream if so. But none of those will affect us. We will be very clear that none of them is real. That clarity makes us free of the dream. Now that is lacking in the waking state, says Bhagavan here. This is something for us as sadhakas to register. How much reality we are ready to weigh over this waking state. It is again, Bhagavan says, that all the objects here are nothing but thought forms. And if we understand that all of them are already within us, this instance, which is what Bhagavan says here, because you think that you are apart from the objects around you, you desire a thing. But if you understand that the thing was only a thought form, you would no longer desire it. This reminds me of an incident where Bhagavan daughter-in-law, when she expressed that she loved a couple of Chennai ladies who had come with certain saris, and she expressed that these are wonderful, beautiful saris, and they went to Chennai and sent a couple of them for her. And as usual, when the parcel was received in the ashram, it was given to Bhagavan. And when Bhagavan handed over that to his daughter-in-law, he made her to remember that whatever you see in others is already inside you. That is the teaching Bhagavan is again bringing here for all of us. He's saying here that all the things that we are seeing and we are going to see tomorrow, day after tomorrow, and we have seen, all of it is nothing but a thought. It is the self itself, but with a difference. As Bhagavan says here in the next paragraph, everything is water, but the bubble is little different from the water. What is that little different? The little difference is that there is an air which is captured in a water, and therefore which is very volatile, and it is going to break, and then the water becomes water again. So, and that bubble is not real. The size of the bubble, the shape of the bubble, and the duration of the bubble is unknown. It is, and the direction in which the bubble moves is unknown. This again reminds me of another incident of a beautiful book in Kannada called Yegdagella Aithe. That means in yoga everything is. So that in that book there is a story of a Swamiji called Mukundur Swami, who comes and meets Belagere Krishna Shastri, who happens to be the uncle of Ravi Belagere, who was who was into publishing and everything. So, who was a reporter. And Ravi Belagare's uncle would be sleeping, thinking that he has not met any such great people in his life, having heard about this Swamiji from his house owner. He, after having his food, he would be lying down in the afternoon, and the house owner would have said that this Swamiji, when the owner himself got married, he was around 80 years. He doesn't know whether that Swamiji is still alive or not. But many people had many great experience with this Mukundur Swamiji. And contemplating upon the Swamiji, Belagere Krishna Shastri would be sleeping, and then suddenly he hears somebody walking into his house and sitting next to him, and he says, "You remembered me and I have come. And you instead of seeing me, you are turning your face on the other side and sleeping." And then the Swamiji takes him for a walk in the evening, and he explains that there will be a waterfall, and he explains it very beautifully. See, what is falling from the top of the mountain is water. And what is these bubbles that are getting created is also water. Each bubble has its own size. Each bubble moves in its own directions. Each bubble lasts for its own time. We don't know which bubble will last for which amount of time, in which direction it moves. But when it breaks open, again it becomes nothing but the water. And exactly if we see all the objects that we experience, which is again caused like the air that has caused, Bhagavan is saying it is our thoughts which have caused it to appear. And that thought and the bubble and that object which gets created in this world, including our own body and all our relatives, everybody, everything here is like a bubble. Some are big, some are small, some are momentary, some are for long duration. Some listen to what we say and move in a certain direction. Some may not listen. They may have their own plan. Seems like they are moving in its own plan. So it is completely not, and then they all break off. Everything that we have done, starting from this body, everything, all the money we have earned, all the name we have earned, all the fame, we know 4 generations behind our grandparents' name, nobody remembers. We ourselves don't know sometimes. So everything here is just transitory, transitory, transitory. So when we recognize that it is only all of them are getting created just because of my thoughts, they are not real. And when I recognize that truth, that whatever I am building is like a dream in this waking state, then I wake up from this continuous dreaming that I am in to a state what I am by inquiring who am I, by recognizing that substratum which enables to see the dream. That light, that pure light of consciousness, which gives light to the dream, which gives light to this whole waking state, which gives light to the sleep where there is no thoughts, no objects. And that light we understand is continuous, unbroken, ajyadhara. And not only we recognize that light, we recognize that is the only thing which is there, everything else is transitory. And this who am I question is making us recognize that we are nothing but that pure light which never undergoes any transformation. And that recognition, that light is there even when the dream is going on. That light is there even when the objective experience is going on. So instead of experiencing the object, we have to experience the light. So at any point in time, we have this option to either experience the object or to experience the light which is revealing the object. So how can we say that light which is ourself is not something that we can hold on length at time? It is the only thing which is at length, whether it is waking, dream or sleep. So it is what we are. All other things in relative to that, when we attend to these objects which are coming and going, then we get this delusion like the standing train and there is another train which is moving. We may get the feeling that we are moving, while actually the other train seems to be moving. It is the same way. We forget to understand that we are always in a stable state. We are always in the self. We are the self. And all these objects which are coming and going because of thoughts is deluding us to believe that we are not the self. And that when we see it in the clear light, and we see that these are nothing but thoughts, imaginary things which are coming and going, I need not have to let go it. I need not have to stop it. In Bhagavan, the question is, to whom is this? Who am I? He is not asking us to stop the stream of thoughts or the objective world. He is asking us to recognize that light which is revealing it and turn our attention to it. That is all Bhagavan is asking us to do. And that is what we are doing naturally, sahaja. That natural thing is what Bhagavan is asking us to recognize by the inquiry, to whom is this, who am I? With this abundant grace, with which alone we have come to this most direct path. For the next 20 minutes, no matter how many thoughts come, no matter whatever may be the dream that may be rising because of the thought, we can always see that it is also, there is a light revealing it. So our attention through inquiry, to whom is this, who am I, is to turn to that light which is revealing, which is the pure consciousness, the pure I am, which is unbroken. No matter what thought comes, it is always for that I am, for that I. And therefore, by inquiring Who am I? We are holding on to that which never goes through any transformation. That by repeated practice, and that is the most important thing which Bhagavan says, we get acquainted to that light by repeated practice, and the mind gains enough strength to remain at the source. With his abundant grace, for the next 20 minutes, let us practice Atma Vichar. नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय नमो रमण और शारदा
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, we are meditating in this section of the Satsang on the Ramana Gita. This is a compilation in 18 chapters in Sanskrit by Ganapati Muni of answers given by Bhagavan to various seekers of truth. Answers given to their questions. These seekers include Ganapati Muni himself and many of his disciples and other devotees who had gathered there, and most of these questions and answers have happened in Skanda Ashrama in the year 1917, and some of them have happened, a couple of them have happened in 1913, 1911, and so on. And they all happened in the Chaturmasya time. We are almost at the end of the Chaturmasya. The Chaturmasya is a time, it is the monsoon season, and it's a time starting from the Vyasa Paurnami or the Guru Paurnami, where all those who were sannyasis in those days would, during this period, because of the monsoon, stay put in a particular place which they would choose for their Chaturmasya, and lot of spiritual discussions would ensue between the gurus and the disciples and various scholars. And this is a period given to spiritual meditations, spiritual discussions. Just as the month of Margari, the Tamil month of Margari, is said to be a month for, again, for spiritual awakening, and more for the devotional spiritual awakening, typified by the songs of Goda or Andal, and also by songs of Manika Vachakar, the Thiruvampavai and the Tirupavai. So in this period, which is a very fertile field for the growth of spiritual thoughts and their blossoming, the Muni and his disciples questioned Bhagavan on various subjects, and they got answers from Bhagavan, which Muni has recorded for us in the form of Ramana Gita, the 18 chapters of Ramana Gita. In another sense, the Muni has also said that these 18 chapters of Ramana Gita are all a commentary or an expansion of Bhagavan's Ekashloki. Hridaya Kuhara Madhye Kevalam Brahma Matram Hyahamahamiti Sakshat Atmarupena Bhati. And that Ekashloki Muni has ensconced in the second chapter. Now, by Bhagavan's grace, we have covered or we have dwelt on 9 chapters of this sacred work, the Ramana Gita. And these 9 chapters are of great significance for the sadhana. And we find that in the very first chapter, Muni establishes the need for practice. There is nothing that is theoretical about self-knowledge. Just by understanding it theoretically, one cannot be said to have knowledge. There must be anubhava, there must be experience. This is the very beginning. Muni begins by saying, Upasana Pradhanya Nirupanam. He asks Bhagavan 5 questions at the outset. He asks whether mental discrimination, Satya, Satya Viveka, this is right, this is wrong, this is right, this is wrong, this is the truth, this is false. Such an understanding with the mind, can that be called jnana? Or can discussions which we have, like we have a discussion, we are talking about self-enquiry. We are talking about self-knowledge. Is this discussion jnana, or is there something beyond it? Is it something which has to come from the Guru's instructions? This is his second question. The third and fourth questions pertain to the state of a Jivan Mukta. What is that state? What is that state? Who is a Sita Prajna? How do we know whether I have reached that state? We are talking of something which is utopian, which is the ultimate to be reached. I need to get to that beautiful state. What is that state? How will I recognize myself if I get to that state? And how will I recognize another person? Is that person there as yet or not? In order to understand the glory of that goal to which we are moving. And the last question which the Muni had put in the first chapter was, see, we have a lot of desires. I have this desire, that desire. I want this to happen. I want that to happen. Now, if I am going towards self-knowledge, or even without my wanting self-knowledge, suddenly if it comes to me, what happens to all my desires? So that is the last question which the Muni had put in the first chapter. Bhagavan answered that experience and experience alone is jnana. That alone is knowledge. We must experience the peace. We must experience the bliss. We must experience the oneness in which there is complete freedom from differences. Therefore, there is no fear. There is no anxiety. There will be no worry at all. There is no sense of difference. Because Bhagavan says, who is a jnani? Sarva bhuta samatvena. The one who is equal towards all beings. And we see this in Bhagavan's life. So, there are two things which Muni establishes here by that question of his. One, he establishes that beautiful state of jnana in which there is oneness with all beings. We are not at loggerheads with anyone or anything. We are not finding fault with anyone or anything, because there is only love and joy. There is only peace. There is that samatva. Another point which Muni is establishing at the very beginning is, because we see Bhagavan is established in that equality. Bhagavan is so equal, whether it's animals or insects or reptiles, or whether they are robbers coming to the ashram or whoever it may be. There is no discrimination at all. They're all included in his net of grace, in his love. Why? Because he is in that state of Sthita Prajna. Therefore, by showing us this example, the Muni has laid the foundation that all the answers which we are getting are coming from Bhagavan, who is established in that state. But for ourselves, how will we know that we have reached there or not? Bhagavan says, by the inner silence. When no longer is there any disturbance from thoughts, then we know perfect silence is there. Then that silence itself is joy. Thoughts are actually sorrowful. Bhagavan says in many places that thoughts are sorrowful. When there is no rise of thoughts, when there is no rise of any motivation, nirvasanena mauna, Bhagavan says that is the state we have to attain. If we have attained that state, what else do we need? Even if all our other desires are fulfilled, which they will be, says Bhagavan, it does not matter anymore, because we would have reached the fullness. And what is that fullness? Is established. This is the introduction which the Muni gives. And then he brings in the Ekashloki of Bhagavan. What is that? What is the crux of that experience? Crux of that experience is within us, in our own heart. Hridaya Kuhara Madhye, in the very center of the heart cave. If we call it a cave, if we think of it as a cave, why? Because We are thinking of ourselves as a body. So within this body means it's like a cave. So in the very center of that, we have the eye shining. Aham, 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 iti sakshat. It shines. I. It is reverberating. It is shining. It is not any word. Though the sound may be I or nan, that sound is not produced by our mind. That sound is not produced by our thoughts. That sound is independent sound of its own accord. It will be shining and reverberating as I. So that is Atma Rupena Bhati. Bhagavan says, enter the heart, Prithivisha, experience this. How are you going to enter the heart? That is up to you. You may hold your breath, you may control your breath and go in, or you may control the thoughts and go in. Use the thoughts as a path to understanding, or you may inquire, who am I? Who am I? Can I be this body? I forget this body in my dreams, and I have another body, one dream body, and I forget that also in my deep sleep. What happens then? Who am I in my deep sleep? Who am I when thoughts are not there? Who am I when I am not having this identity? I am having a different identity from minute to minute. I was a different person when I was 3 years old. Now I am different. Another 10 years ago or 10 years later, I will be different still. Who is the I who is observing all this? Who am I really? Within me, is there one person sitting? There is no person sitting within me. Then who am I? So, inquiry. Majjata, chinvata, swam chinvata. And one gets that. Bhagavan says, this is what you need to do. Atmanishto bhavatva. Everything that Bhagavan is telling us, his entire life is to reveal this truth. It is that grace. And then Bhagavan goes on in the 3rd chapter to tell us this is the most important duty. This is the mukhya kartavyam. There is no greater duty than this, than self-abidance through self-enquiry. So what is the nature of that jnana? Jnana swarupa. Here it is little different from the 1st chapter. In the 1st chapter, Muni asked about viveka and he asked about charcha, discussion. But in the 4th chapter, he is asking about dhyana. He says, if I do dhyana on the self through the Mahavakyas, will that be jnana? If I meditate on the self using concepts such as Aham Brahmasmi or any other beautiful concept which talks about self is Satchidananda, self is free. Within me there is no division between thoughts and the thinker. That's a thought. That's also a thought, a better thought. So any thought, any exalted thought, any exalted concept, is that the truth? No, that is also a concept. In the self, there is no rise or set of thoughts. Bhagavan clarifies and he says that then if there is no thought, Muni is asking, how is one to experience that? The very first verse Bhagavan has said in the prayer of Sadhashna, if I cannot think over there, how can I experience the self? Can thought experience the self? Bhagavan says, when thought tries to experience the self, when thought tries to seek the self, it dissolves into the self and the experience of the self alone remains. The awareness of the self alone remains. Then Bhagavan himself goes on to talk about the signs of the heart, the spiritual heart within us, which is only shining as I. So, what is this spiritual heart? How is it different from the physical heart? Why is the body not important? At the same time, how is it that the body becomes important for us? It's only because of the power of the spiritual heart, Bhagavan explains. And he says, because of the power of the spiritual heart, because its power is pervading the body, we think we are the body. So, what are we to do? We should get back to the source. What stops us from getting back to the source? It is the mind, which is all the time creating thoughts. It's all the time creating problems. It's all the time rising up in waves. So, we need to control the mind. How to control the mind? Bhagavan talks about mind control. He says we can control the mind through breath. But better is to control the mind through thought. That can be by doing japa or dhyana, or of course through self-enquiry, which will be the 7th chapter. And before that, Bhagavan also says there is one very beautiful way of controlling the mind. It is satsanga, being in the company of the sages, being in the company of the ones who are abiding in the truth. That's satsanga. How can we keep company of Bhagavan? We can keep company of Bhagavan by meditating on his life. When we meditate on Bhagavan's life, a great devotee called Y.V. Venkateshwar Rao says, Ramanacentre chintana nasha bhavada bandhana. So we can meditate on Bhagavan's life and keep company with Bhagavan. But the best way of keeping company with Bhagavan is to abide as his own truth, which is the self. And Bhagavan gives us the path of self-enquiry for that. In the 7th chapter, he teaches us how to do self-enquiry, defines self-enquiry clearly for us, and says how we should ask ourselves, who am I? Self-enquiry is getting back to the source of the mind, to the source of the I. Where from does this I rise when I wake up? Where does it disappear into when I go to sleep? Just to keep on watching it, to watch it, to watch it. Like tracing a mouse getting back into his hole. Like tracing some other creature getting back to its hiding spot, back to its den. Like that, we have to watch it, watch it, watch it as it subsides. Watch it, watch it, watch it as it rises. And as it subsides again, and get back to that source, says Bhagavan. And he talks about how self-enquiry is the cure for all problems. In this chapter, Bhagavan declares Sarva Klesha Nivritti. Self-enquiry is a cure for all problems, all difficulties, no matter what the difficulty. If we do self-enquiry, we can be free from it. Why? Because we can be free from the source of that problem, which is the ego, the I thought. Then Bhagavan goes on to explain how the different stages of life in our life, the actual manifestation. We may be students, we may be in the midst of work, or we may have a retired life with some time to give specifically for the sadhana, or we may have all the time in the world only for the sadhana. How are we to commingle? How are we to manage this manifest aspect of our lives with our sadhana is explained to us by Bhagavan in the chapter on Ashrama Vichara, in the 8th chapter. How to apply it in our day-to-day lives. And then finally, he comes to the Granthi Bheda. All this is happening because of one thing called the ego, or the not, which is actually there and not there. It is a mystery. It is seeming to have consciousness, but it's limiting itself to the body and saying, I am the body. If one inquires into this, the not, it becomes itself a bridge back to consciousness. The way it draws us outside, we can trace it back to its source. And then what happens? Bhagavan says, that state, Parama Shakti, and it is Parama Shanti. That state is full of power. Everything is possible in that state. All actions, all things, everything is possible. But there is no need for anything because there will be supreme peace. Since there is supreme peace, there will be no need for exhibiting any power. That is the greatest power. The greatest power is the power of peace, says Bhagavan. And that is how these 9 chapters give us a full gamut of our practice of self-inquiry and what all we need as supports of self-inquiry. The second half of Ramana Gita goes on to related questions, related areas, and some details in our day-to-day life. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri.
Namo Ramana. Apara Satchit Sukhabarirashe Yasyormimatram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gabhiram Chintavihinam Hridhi Chintayami Chintavihinam Hridhi Chintayami